What is the most supernatural or unexplainable thing that has happened to you?
When I was little, I used to stay over at my grandmother's all the time. She would make me a pallet out of blankets on her living room floor, and she would always sit with me and rub my back until I fell asleep. Once, when I was 5 or 6, I woke up in the living room alone. Now, this was an old and isolated farmhouse, cornfields, and no other houses surrounded her, so it was very dark. I had a moment where I forgot where I was. I remember I was laying on my back, and I sort of half propped myself up with my arms, looking ahead of me toward her big TV cabinet, but I couldn't see much. I then rolling over onto my belly to look behind me, in a sort of propped up seal position. As soon as I turned over, I was looking straight at a little girl who was standing at the head of my pallet looking down at me. She was a bit older looking than me, with dark, curly hair, and she was wearing an old-fashioned dress, but not one that went to the floor. It sort of stopped at her ankles. The weirdest thing was that I wasn't afraid of her. I was confused and a little timid, but mostly curious. She had a soft bluish-whitish glow around her. I wouldn't call it a light BC, it didn't really shine out, more just encased her, for lack of a better word. She was just looking at me, and she also had a sort of curious/intrigued look on her face that I don't know how long we stared at one another, not a very long time for sure, but my curiosity got the better of me, and I very slowly and softly reached out my hand to touch her. Before my hand could get close to her, she dissipated. She did not disappear. It was more like watching water turn into a steam cloud, but this cloud was made of tiny little spheres/particles the same shade of bluish-white that encased her, and moving as a unit. The cloud of spheres moved to the window, floating, and went through the glass and out of my line of sight. Seeing that triggered my fear response, and I literally screamed, "Grandma!" She rushed in quickly, and tried comforting me by saying it was a dream. It absolutely was not a dream. I was too awake/aware, and it couldn't be sleep paralysis, because I moved too much. When I was several years older, Grandma confided in me that she knew the house to be haunted. She said she would see a tall shadow pacing the hall, the doors would rattle shake, and nobody was home but her. Alone in the house, she'd hear footsteps and voices in my grandpa's old study, and a little dark-haired girl would run by the windows in her living room. Creepy stuff, man.